Then we're going to look at Learning Unit 6, and we'll do a little bit of assignment feedback. So first of all, you know this well by now. The pacer or the suggested pacer. Oh, I see the arrow is a little bit skew there, if I'm correct, sorry. The arrow, we are obviously at the week starting the 8th of September, which is decision making, Learning Unit 6, which is what we're going to be looking at tonight. But nonetheless, if you see that that pacer, we are really heading towards the second part of the semester. We're in the second part of the semester. So if you've fallen behind, please take some time to catch up. And as always, if you want to work ahead, the resources are there for you. Sometimes when we have a little bit of extra time, especially between assessments 1 and 2, there's sometimes a little bit of extra time. So use that time to catch up if you need to. Then an important date, so the ICE date, the final date. So remember that 30th of September date was always a tentative date. So now you've got a little bit of extra time, nearly 2 weeks extra to complete all the ICE tasks. So if you haven't already, please take the time to do so. Make sure you do those 4 ICE tasks. They contribute to your overall mark, and it's really worth it, not only for the mark, but also to help you to revise what you've done in the unit. Then also just a question that I had via email, and I'm pretty sure there's other people with the same questions, although I couldn't really answer it to the extent I think that you'd like it to be answered, but it's regarding the exam. So this exam is a online exam. It is on the online assessment platform. I'm not sure if you've used it before, but it's called DUGA. And that is the exam. So it's a closed book exam as far as I know. Anything that has been communicated to you is the same information at this point that we as lecturers have about the exam, right? So that's just the information. Anything additional to that, as soon as I know, I will also communicate that to you. But that's as all the information that the IAE has released about it so far, is that it is on the online platform, and yeah, it is an exam.
Ma'am, can I ask,
Yes.
won't there be an option for us to go to campus and write?
That's option. So there was an option for that in the first semester, but again, that will be verified by the IAE. But so far, in my experience with this module on online or online school, it's been 3. I've done it for 3 semesters, and every time they had an option, but I can't give you a definite answer because it's not my decision at all. But so far, there was the option each semester. But ultimately, it's all going on to all the modules and everything is going on to DAGA in totality. So, yeah, that's all I can say. Sorry, Cindy, I wish I knew more, but I don't. It's not my decision. This is done by the IAE. So last semester, they did have an option, but you have to register at the campus, or had to register to write.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So I would, if I were you, raise a ticket with VC Assist and say if you want to write at a campus, what you need to do.
Okay,
That would
I'll
be
call
my
them
advice.
tomorrow.
Because it would be, so the reason obviously is for the campus to be prepared for a student writing,
Yes.
to have a paper and everything ready. So that's what that's my advice. I can't confirm anything just purely because I have the same amount of information as you at the moment. So I don't want to give you wrong advice. But that's what they could do last semester. They could register and then write at a campus. The Duga platform, I've only heard positive feedback regarding the writing on that. But again, whatever is obviously for you, the most convenient or comfortable to write.
Okay, ma'am.
Uh, So that's the exam. But as I also said in previous sessions, remember the preparation for the exam actually starts at the beginning of the semester. So please make sure as you're working through the work that you are preparing yourself for that final assessment. As you work through each unit, make your summaries to be prepared for that final that final exam. Then just a question on your assignment. Has your marks been released?
No, ma'am. We would love it if you tell us if we passed or not.
Have you gotten your marks? Not
No.
yet. Okay. That's done by the grade center. So as soon as the marks are released, they usually let me know and I can open it up on VC, on ARC. Sure, VC learned that's a while ago. Um, so then I can open it up on ARC. But we will look at the feedback just quickly at the end of the session. But of course, also there's individual feedback on the rubrics.
So more or less,
Yeah,
did we pass, or
sorry.
more or less did we pass?
Oh, sorry, I can't. There's quite a few. There's a few students, different groups, and then also, I've been marking quite a while ago, but obviously all the different groups marks needs to be in. I because I've got I had different deadlines after that. I marked it quite early on, just after your submission. I can't remember that anything was terribly bad, to be honest. The one thing that was quite strange, that I haven't had before, I think it was at least four students out of both the groups that submitted the wrong assessments.
Oh my
So
God.
that was, but I did email those students individually, and
Oh, and then it's
but
not
that,
me.
sorry.
I'm saying then it's not me. I didn't get an email from you.
No, it's on the wrong topic altogether. So that's something just to take note of. I don't think it would happen the second time around. So it's the confusion of codes. So for
Yes,
distance, you need to put a W at the
yes,
end,
yes.
and then of course it's always wise to compare it to the one that we do in the assessment prep as well, just to make sure you've got the right one. But no, if luckily, because I marked it so early, I could email students, but it seems like VC Assist is not taking that as an excuse. So I'm not too sure. That's luckily not my decision to grant it. But I've had one feedback where they said, unfortunately, they can't resubmit. So just please make sure that you submit the right assessment. At the end of the day, any decision regarding late assessments or resubmissions is not done by me. It's done per policy by VC Assist. So that's not my call at the end of the day at all. I don't have the authority. But yeah, so please make sure for those watching the recording that you please make sure that you submit the right assessment. Even this, I didn't get this where in your groups, but sometimes I also get students submitting the wrong assignment to the wrong link, meaning submitting one of the other subjects assignments to this link and vice versa, and the same really then applies. So please make sure it's the right assessments. But yeah, I think overall the marks are pretty. There was nothing that stood out that there was a problem or anything like that. But sorry, Cindy, that information has left my mind quite a while ago. The individual marks in terms of marking, but it wasn't bad at all.
Okay, ma'am.
That I was worried at all. So yeah, that was the assessments. But please look at the feedback, whatever your feedback was, please look at it to avoid making the same mistakes or to repeat the same, if it was done well, then you can repeat the same behavior in your second assessment. So it's always good to look at feedback. But your next assessment is on barter shoes. This was on Uber. So nice, two very different topics that you are looking at. And I will be posting the pre-recording as soon as your marks have been released, and then you can start on your second assessment again. All right, but we'll quickly look at the feedback towards the end, which you then can go back to once your marks are being released. Ideally, it would have been great if you could open up your rubric when we were going through it, but as I said, or as you said, unfortunately, your marks haven't been released yet. So we'll just do the feedback, and then once you've got a chance, when the marks are released, you can go and look at that. Okay, so the learning unit 6 is on decision making, and on the screen in front of you, it's just a reminder if you've got the time to work through the resources that's put there for you, so that you just have a greater understanding. It also, of course, helps you when you are creating your notes for your exam, ultimately, to have a good understanding of the content before starting those notes or embarking on those notes. So, why is decision making important in the management process? So, decision making, we've got an entire chapter dedicated to it. Why do you think it's important in the management process? And Shane, Cindy, now I know you're the only one that is here to answer. It will be lovely if you answer, but please don't feel that all the pressure is on you. If you want to answer, those who are watching the recording, it's always a good idea when we're applying to press pause, and then you try and apply it yourself first, and then you press play again, and you can listen to the feedback. Right, so decision making is really, really important, hence the dedication of this chapter to it. And the reasons for it is, firstly, it sets direction. So if you make good decisions, it guides the organization, hopefully, where it needs to go towards its vision. Now, granted, my decisions needs to be based on good, solid information, relevant and timely information. Another reason is that it helps me to use my resources wisely. It helps the managers to know where to spend their time and their money. It also helps me to manage my risk. So it helped me to identify problems and then finding ways to avoid them. Decisions also help me to solve problems. It also helps to boost morale, because we can include our employees in our decision making, and this could make them feel valued and get them actually engaged in the decision making. It helps us to adapt to change. So it helps organizations to quickly respond to new opportunities or new challenges. So those are some of the reasons. Another reason could also be that it helps me to measure how the organization is doing. So the decisions and the plans that I made, I can compare my performance against it. Any reasons that you wanted to add, Cindy? Oh, can't you hear me? Oh no, my mic is on. Okay. So I hope the rest of you can hear me in the recording. My mic is on. Cindy has just let me know that she can't hear me, but she's logging in and out. So hopefully you are able to hear me. Let's see. She's logged back on. Let's see. Let me just admit her there into the chat room. Let's see. Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Can you?
Okay, I wonder what that was. My mic was on, so I wasn't sure. But if you can hear me now, then the problem is solved, whatever it is. That's awesome. All right, so if we look at problems and we look at problem solving and we look at decision making, we can actually see that these are linked. But before we see that, problems, so whenever a manager perceives a difference between what has actually happened and what they plan to happen, can be seen as a problem. And in the process of taking corrective action that will solve a problem is a problem solving. And in the process of selecting an alternative course of action that will solve a problem is decision making. So these are linked, as we said, and problems initiate the need for action. Problem solving then is the method for finding solutions, and then decision making is the act of selecting the best solution from the options available, the possible solutions. So together they form a cycle that helps individuals and organizations navigate changes. So that is how they are linked. Now, there are different types of managerial decisions. There's program decisions and there's non-program decisions. Program decisions are decisions that are repetitive and routine. And then your non-program decisions, they are novel and unstructured and they haven't occurred before. So program decisions, some examples of that would be reordering or reordering your inventory. So you might have a set specific inventory level. So for instance, if your inventory falls below 100 units, then you would reorder automatically. So you do this to ensure that there's always stock or inventory available. And that's really just a program decision. If you are working, you might have dealt with this before, employee leave requests. So a company would have a standard policy for handling holiday requests. So employee can take certain days of the year, and then the request is granted or rejected based on a predetermined set of actions. Non-program decisions, this could be, for instance, when you launch a new product. So you need to decide whether to enter a new market with either a completely new product or maybe just adapted product. You need to do extensive research and it involves a lot of uncertainty and unique factors. Or you might involve yourself in a merger or acquisition, and this means you need to decide, evaluate and decide whether to either merge or to acquire another company. And this involves complex and very unstructured factors like would this be a good cultural fit for your organization? What would it do to the financial health of the organization? And what are the marketing conditions? Now, the decision-making conditions, you'll see this is on a continuum in front of you. You'll see that on the one end, we have our available options. Benefits and costs are known. And you've got your risk. The outcomes on alternatives are not known in advance, but its probability can be assigned to them. And then lastly, outcomes of alternatives are unpredictable and probabilities cannot be determined, and that's uncertainty on the right-hand side. Right. And then decision-making conditions. So the reality is we're operating in an environment that's pretty volatile and dynamic. And the decisions usually, the type of decisions we're going to make is based on the conditions that we find ourselves in. The two models that you see here in front of you is the rational model and the bounded rationality model. So managers need to know which models to use when. So first of all, we get the rational model. So this assumes decision makers have complete information, clearly defined goals, and unlimited time and resources to make the optimal choice. You'll see these are usually non-programmed high-risk decisions in conditions of uncertainty. And you could also do something which is called optimizing. So the characteristics of this is logical, structured, step-by-step decision-making. So for instance, a company chooses the supplier that offers the lowest total cost after evaluating all possible suppliers and delivery options. Whereas the bounded rationality model, here you usually use satisficing. Now, satisficing is when you choose the first best option. So with bounded rationality models, you recognize that the decision maker have limited information, limited time, and cognitive constraints, so they settle for a satisfactory, not necessarily the optimal solution. So the first best solution that comes their way. So the characteristics, this is for simplified decision making. We use satisficing rather than optimizing like with a rational model. So an example here would the manager chooses the first supplier that meets their quality standards rather than looking at all the possible suppliers that is out there. So limited for time would be a better option. And then we look at different techniques that we can use. And some of these might be familiar to you, different techniques that we can use when it comes to group decision making. So brainstorming, I'm pretty sure most of you've been involved in brainstorming. This is a creative method where really you get your participants to give as many possible ideas or solutions as possible. In an open and spontaneous environment. So you give everybody just the opportunity as they come up with an idea or a solution to share it with the group. And the emphasis is on producing as many ideas as possible without criticism. And this then creates innovative thinking. That's the first technique. The second one is the nominal group technique. This is a structured approach where the individuals first generate ideas independently. So they come up with quite a lot of ideas or solutions by themselves. Once they've got a couple of ideas or solutions to share, they then share it with the group. Each person presents their own thoughts without immediate discussion. Then it's followed by group conversation. And then they prioritize ideas or solutions based on everybody's inputs. They then vote and rank it in order of importance. Then the Delphi technique. This technique uses experts, and you get consensus amongst experts through several rounds of anonymous surveys. So these experts will give all their solutions or ideas anonymously. They then share their opinions after each round, and then a summary of feedback is provided, allowing for the refinement of ideas until finally a decision or an agreement is reached. And then the last method is the group decision support system. This is an interactive computer-based tool that aids group decision making. This system enhances collaboration and idea generation, and it features functions such as voting, anonymous contributions, and real-time feedback to increase the effectiveness of this decision-making, the group decision-making. So those are the group decision-making tools. So we've got conditions of decision-making during, or decisions making during conditions of certainty, and then conditions of uncertainty and risk-taking. So let's look at the first decision-making under conditions of uncertainty. We've got linear programming and queuing theory. So linear programming is a mathematical method for optimizing outcomes like profit while adhering to constraints such as your constraints of resources and budgets. It involves defining an objective function, setting constraints, and identifying decision variables. Linear programming is useful in manufacturing, transportation, and finance because of its efficient resource allocation. Then the queuing theory analyzes waiting lines to predict queue lengths and waiting times. It considers things like arrival rates, services rates, and queue discipline to determine how customers are served. This tool is used in sectors like telecommunication, traffic management, and this is in order to improve efficiency and reduce the waiting time of customers. Then if we look at the right-hand side of the slide, so our decision-making tools in conditions of risk and uncertainty, our probability analysis, this assesses the likelihood of different outcomes to inform decisions, and this helps managers to quantify risks and uncertainties. The payoff matrix is a grid, and this grid summarizes the potential outcomes of various decisions, and this is based on different scenarios, facilitating comparisons between alternatives. Then a decision tree is a graphical representation of decisions and their possible consequences, helping evaluate risk and rewards of different paths. Break-even analysis is probably one that you've been familiar with. This determines the sale level at which total revenue equals total cost, helping managers assess pricing and product decisions. And then capital budgeting evaluates long-term investments based on expected cash flows and returns using techniques like net present value and your internal rate of return. And then lastly, simulation. This creates models to replicate real-world scenarios, and it allows you to explore what-if situation and evaluation of risks in complex decisions. Right, so that's just very quickly learning Unit 6 and what you can expect as you work through this unit. Do you have any questions, Cindy?
No, ma'am.
Shane, thanks. And those of you, of course, that are watching the recording, when you're going through the work and the support material, please let me know if you've got any questions. Then we're going to quickly look at Uber. So I know it's been a while since you've now looked at the assignment. It's been handed in quite a while ago and marked. So first of all, you had to have a good understanding of the prescribed work. And I think the crux of it is that the textbook is always the starting point for the research. So here and there were people who did not use the textbook at all. Just remember, the textbook is the prescribed material for this course, and it actually serves two main functions. Firstly, it helps you to understand, so it's good for understanding. And then also it helps to measure whether the information that has been researched is credible or not. So that is the first thing. Then on the referencing and AI, I'm not going to spend too much time, but I would like to reiterate a few things when it comes to the ethical or the unethical use of AI. So I really, especially in the last little while, I've been using AI quite a bit for silly things like drawing up emails, or even the other day I was using it I couldn't think of what I should write in a thank you card, and I actually used AI. And when I did it, I realized that I'm actually starting to think less and less and less, and I'm using my brain less and less and less, and that is terrible. So the challenge always still for us as academics, you and I as academics, is that we keep on thinking for ourselves. So really, here and there, it was evident that AI was not used ethically. So meaning it wasn't disclosed and it was used for research purposes or research function and not just for guidance or for checking grammar and spelling and things like that. So the checking of grammar and spelling and things like that, the way I've just worded it is maybe a little bit informal, but I would really encourage you actually not to use it, just purely because the function on Word to check spelling and grammar is sufficient. You're not measured on your eloquency of how you write. It's just purely, are you able to write in an academic tone, which you could do before the use of AI, and then whether you're able to do so without making grammar and spelling mistakes, and the word function will do that for you. And the reason why I encourage that is because if you use AI to do that, it actually creates a lot more work for you, because you need to reference it and you need to in text and in the reference list, and also the additional addendum with the links that you have to create. And so far in all my marking of all my modules this semester, I haven't seen anybody referencing it correctly and having the correct addendum. So I would encourage you to just use the good old Word function for spelling and grammar. Where the percentage was high in the AI report, I copied the summary of the report into the comments section then for the student to see where AI was suspected. I also indicated on the paper to make sure that hopefully AI isn't used again for the incorrect reason. So ultimately, remember why you're completing assessment, and whether we really achieve anything by using AI and humanizing it, because ultimately we need to learn to think for ourselves, or to continue to think for ourselves, because if AI can do everything for us, then there won't be a need for us. So we need to make sure we think for ourselves. So that was a few things. The unethical use of AI really did pop up quite a bit. So that is just on the AI side. What you see in front of you now there is just again just to show you that you can go and look at that recording on the ethical use of AI. So I'm not going to go through the AI information again. I'm just going to show you very quickly. I'm skipping a little bit of slides just to remember you need to have not only reference it, so according to the policy, labeling it, that's referencing in text and at the end, but also you need to have that addendum with the prompts, either screenshot or the link being active, to show how you used AI. All right, and then this is the rubric that we use in order to mark referencing, right? So that is the rubric which is in the front of your assessment. So if you lost marks for referencing, just please go and look why. I'm going to show you some of the most common errors that we get, or that I get in the next slide. So just go and see if you lost marks, why did you lose marks? So, and then the second point there in the rubric, if you didn't lose marks but I made comments, just please try and eliminate those mistakes so that in the future you might not lose any marks. Okay, so probably the most common one is the technical errors. That's just incorrect referencing. Incongruency between the reference list and the in-text referencing is also a common one. Referencing errors, positioning referencing, positioning errors were actually quite a big mistake, or I saw it a lot in these assessments. That means the reference is put at the end of a paragraph or a question, and not actually where it was used. So let's say there was theory and then some application to Uber, and then at the end of that paragraph, there's a reference at the brackets or an entire question at the end, sometimes even on a different line, there's then a reference. That's actually positioning errors. Or placement errors. So just make sure you actually put the reference where you used it. Referencing the textbook where not the source is also quite a common one. Yeah, the textbook, usually your markers know the textbook pretty well, and it's clear when the information doesn't align with what's in the textbook, but then it's a reference, or whether the application to, in this case, Uber, is referenced as if it is from the textbook. References omitted is also quite a big one. And then, your references that are no longer accessible, that's usually AI, because AI makes up references, or they take very old, outdated references, and when you click on them, those references are actually archived and you can't access them. Nobody can. So that's usually a AI, as a result of AI. Right, so please go and make sure this is what it looks like, that pre-recording. If you need to, please have a little bit of a refresher on that. And if you struggled with your referencing, please let the raise a ticket to book a ticket with the librarian. Okay, so let's quickly go through the assignment. Right, remember every single assignment starts with an introduction and a conclusion. Whether there's requirements for that, it doesn't really matter. That is what you need to do at this level. An academic assignment requires that. I also gave you in the preparation just a overview of what it should like, or an example of what it should like, headings and subheadings. Justify text spacing that's correct, font that's correct, and then of course the academic tone, that's quite important. Right, so yeah, you had to research the market environment. A couple of people researched the macro environment, two very different things. Macro environment is your pestle analysis, so looking at your political, economical, social, cultural, technological, legal, and ecological factors. Whereas the market environment is different. We're looking here at our customers and our competitors and our suppliers and our labor sources. So that is what you had to do for this question, is the market environment. So I think that was the biggest problem. And then also, this is also true for your pestle analysis. When you do an analysis of the market environment, you look at how it impacts Uber, not how Uber impacts the environment. So it's part of a situational analysis. So you need to see what factors in the market environment will have an impact on Uber now or in the very near future. So those were probably the two mistakes there. Generally is where the macro environment was discussed, so that would have been a straight 0 for out of 15 for that, because it's the wrong answer in totality. But the application, so sometimes people made the mistake by saying how Uber is, for instance, creating employment, how Uber is doing whatever what they are doing, and how it affects the market environment, and that's incorrect. It's the other way around. So then you would have gotten marks for the theory, but the application would have then been a little bit less marks. All right, so that was 1.1. And then 1.2 was really, really well answered. So here you had to discuss the different levels of management at Uber, and you had to outline what the duties and functions of a manager at each level would be. The theory had to be applied to Uber, and you had to explain at which at each level what the manager would be responsible for. So that was really well explained across the board, is the levels of management. the next question. All right, so sorry, I'm just going to my notes as well. The next question, here you had to explain plan change, reactive change, and revolutionary change. Your explanation could have included relevant examples to Uber. So for each one, some relative examples, what would have been an example of a change plan, what of a plan change, sorry, what would have been an example of a reactive change, and what would be an example of a revolutionary change. And ultimately, you had to say which one this new Uber bakkie was, and it was plan change. So there was evidence in the case study that it was plan change. You had to give support your argument from the case. If you did choose revolutionary, which a few people did, and your justification was good, you would have gotten probably the majority of the marks for the justification, but not all of the marks. All right, so here you had to identify the 5 forces of change that was relevant to Uber, and you had to apply the theory again to the case, and these were the internal forces. And also well answered. The only times where there were marks missing is when the textbook wasn't used as the guidance on what to research, because of course the memo is based on that, and the internal forces had to be mentioned. Then Hertzberg's theory. So with Hertzberg theory, I also think this was also well answered. Maybe sometimes the application was a little bit weak, but you need to remember, when we know what motivates people, it will drive them to act. So yeah, you had to distinguish between hygiene factors and then motivators. And then you just had to apply it to Uber. Right. So also still very straightforward. Using again the textbook, there were some great sources also that other people used, just explaining Hertzberg's two-factor motivation, the hygiene factors and the motivators, and how they, of course, also are, how they relate to each other. Then the last question, the essay question, this was also fairly well answered. There was a rubric, as you know, to guide you on what to answer. With the essay question, you had to speak about agile leadership, and it definitely had to be linked to Uber, so you needed to give some examples of leadership within Uber for your application. But again, this was also well answered, and also because of the rubric itself, it was easy to score quite high marks. It's actually the same because of the mark allocation, how it was distributed. That would have been the same also for question 1.5, even though we've already gone through that question. It's just to also just highlight that was also easy to score some high marks there. And that is just the essay rubric, just to remind you what it looked like. So the marks were allocated to the structure and then the content. And a lot of, I think the majority of students had the structure right. So that was just the guidance that you were given. But it had to be clear that you knew that agile leadership is flexible and collaborative. Usually an agile leader empowers people. They focus on customer needs. They adapt to change quite quickly. They encourage continuous improvement. So you needed to give a theoretical description, and then you needed to find evidence, a little bit of additional research of evidence that Uber's managers display agile leadership style. Right, so it was important that it was detailed and descriptive and that it showed good research. And that was the assessment. Please look at your individual rubrics, not only just the feedback on the rubric, but also the requirements. So look at both the requirement and the feedback on each individual rubric. And if you've got questions, of course, let me know. I would love to hear from you, those who are not on the call tonight. And Cindy, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Are you all good? I'm sorry
Yes,
you
ma'am.
don't have your marks yet. I was hoping you would be able to look at your assessments whilst we quickly go through this, but hopefully they'll release it tomorrow. And once they release the marks on the portal, then I'm able to open it on ARC. But until
Yes,
they notify me that they've until they verify it, I can't open it up on ARC unless, in case there's something wrong with the marks. So that is the assessment. Then I'll be posting that assignment 2 for you as soon as possible. If you have no questions, it was lovely to have you online. Sorry you were that all the pressure was on you. But I hope you have a little bit of rest before your next assessment. I don't know how busy your schedule are, but hopefully you've got a little bit of rest before you've got another assessment again.
thank you, ma'am.
Have a lovely evening.